Sue. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
So maybe we could start by, I guess, how would you describe what you do?
I am a parenting coach, so I work with parents, I work with kids, teens and tweens, and I'm trying to sort of help parents understand that the way that we've been parenting for years and years and years and all the things that we've been taught about parenting is wrong. We're taught that in the space of parenting that we are supposed to change the child. But in fact, if we want behavior to change, we have to show up differently and we have to change our approach and what we're doing. So anyway, all of that I've learned in being a parent myself and in studying behavior psychology and parenting, as well as mentoring other families and coaching kids, I'm realizing that we just need to have a little bit different understanding and a different approach. And much of this approach is somewhat of a counterintuitive one.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, there's a lot of places we can go with that. I think a good place to start is I've heard you describe yourself as a reformed yeller.
Yes.
Maybe describe the conditions in your life that made you realize that this potentially isn't working anymore.
Well, in my particular case, having children is a stressful event anyway. And if I didn't have younger siblings, then I wasn't really raised around kids. So I had no idea. I thought you just talk to little kids and they do, I had no idea that there was psychology involved and that there was strategy and that you have to meet them on their level and all the nuances that are required for parenting. I didn't realize that was a thing. We had our firstborn, and then when we went to have our second baby, I ended up having natural triplets. So I went from 1 to 4 kids overnight. And I also run my own business. I'm also married to a guy in the military who deployed, was gone a lot. So I had a lot on my plate and I had it quickly. So I was yelling all the time. I grew up being yelled at. I grew up with restriction and punishment and, being grounded and all of that. And that's all I knew. And that's all any of us brings in our parenting is our patterns and how we were raised. So I found myself yelling, especially my firstborn, who is a lot like me and never met a rule that he didn't want to break. So I was finding myself, with the 3 babies and him pushing my buttons and I just yelling all the time. And my throat actually hurt. I was yelling so much because I just was like, do it now and be happy I asked. Like, what does this take for me to get to you to listen to me? And, kids, it's a 24-hour-a-day grind.
Yeah, I feel like it's also like kind of mixed in with this. I don't know, that there's a period in, like if I think of my life, there's a period where you're young and free and wild, and then all of a sudden you have kids and you don't think too much about it. It's just something that happens. And then you're thrust into this, oh God, now I need to really make money and think about my career. And at the same time, you've started having kids, so that's sucking a lot of your time. So you kind of thrust into this world of responsibility and yeah, it just coincides with the same time where you're obsessing over a career, right? And I mean, I had this thing when I started having kids, and I think it's common for a lot of men. It probably is for women as well, where, I don't know, I guess I saw a lot of parents from when I was a kid get stuck into this financial struggle. Like they had kids and they never really recovered financially, and they went through a lot of years of really struggling. So it really pushed me to work hard on my career. And at the same time, you're trying to figure out how to be a parent, and you just end up in this like constant rush mode, like I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And then like you just, yeah, you fall into the patterns of your parents, I guess, but you're also always in such a rush that it's like trying to mold a 4-year-old into something they're potentially not, and you don't have the time to. Do you know what I'm getting at here? Yeah.
100%. And this is the stuff that no one tells you, and it's the financial part is one thing, but I liken it to a treadmill that never stops. So you work You might be walking on the treadmill and sometimes you are sprinting on the treadmill, but you are always on a treadmill that's not stopping. And sometimes you can kind of catch your breath, but you're always moving, always moving. And that's the way it is with kids. With kids, and if you do it right, your time with the kids is always put first. So their needs are being met. And then the leftover time that I had was spent on building my business. And yes, I took a risk, left a corporate job. I built my own business and took a risk with my own savings account. Luckily, I had a good 5 years before we had kids because I tried to plan it that way. But, I'm building a business, building it, creating something from nothing. And then these kids come and, then go from 1 to 4 overnight. I mean, it's enough to really do you in, because it is super stressful. And as a result of what you were saying earlier, of that, you have this nice, easygoing life, and then you've got kids. It's a totally different scene. As a result of that, I've taught our kids that, hey, your 20s are your selfish years. Make sure you have your fun and do it with intention. So be careful, don't get anybody pregnant right away, save your money, travel, have your fun, because once the kids come, if you are going to parent correctly, you are going to be available to them to invest in them, not just financially, but emotionally and psychologically and all the things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I went through a very extreme period. I kind of started the business that coincided with when my daughter was born. And I remember being so obsessed with success that I was back at work the day after she was born, and I was working crazy long hours. And I don't know, I look back at that time and I've got a weird relationship because I regret it because I feel like I missed out on so much, but I'm also living off the fruits of those labors, right? Like the business is quite successful now, and it never would have been if I didn't really grind at those early years. Okay, so I picked up from what you said that yelling probably is not the best strategy. Maybe, first of all, maybe yeah, maybe why?
It works. It might work sometimes. Yeah. There's a time and a place for me to use that as a tool, okay? But as a daily form of communication with my kids, no, it doesn't work. And yeah, getting back to the original question, which was that, how did I know that it wasn't working? Not only because my husband pointed out and said, you're yelling. And of course, I didn't take it too kindly. I'm like, well, of course I'm yelling. I justified it, right? I've got all these, things that I'm balancing. But at the end of the day, what really turned me was my oldest just sort of glazing over when I was yelling. So here I had some things that I really needed. And he was probably about 5, but I'm trying to talk to him. I'm looking at him and I'm trying to tell him what I need from him. And I'm ramping it up and I'm yelling, and he's just glazing over. And I just saw he just went blank. Nothing you're saying is getting through to me right now. And I finally realized that between my husband telling me you're yelling and just calling my awareness to it, and then my son's reaction to me, and then of course the behavior, no needle is being moved at all, that no progress is being made. It's just this vicious cycle of kids misbehaving, them not listening, my throat hurting. And at some point you have to stop and have some self-awareness and say, okay, it's not working, and now I need to go figure out what will.
It's interesting because I feel like I maybe come at it from a slightly different angle as far as the not yelling thing. I feel like I kind of had the fear struck in me when I was young around yelling, and sometimes not so much now because I think I'm quite mindful about it, but when I caught myself yelling when I was younger at the kids, I kind of got these flashbacks of fearing my parents, and I never wanted my kids to fear me. Okay, so
that's an interesting distinction, because I think it's because you're a man. And my husband says the same thing, because when you raise your voice, it is a lot more scary. From a little perspective, a man yelling is so much more aggressive sounding. And Mom, I'm just over here yelling all the time. It's not as much of a threat. It is demeaning. It does make the kids second guess themselves. It does ruin their confidence. It does a bunch of terrible things. In my case, I was in the state of mind that you were talking about earlier, which was like, I've got stuff to do. I'm in a rush. And the more I have to take time to train you and to stop what I'm doing and come back and circle back, I'm just now even more frustrated. So in my case, it was yelling because I was just feeling impatient. And in your case, I think that's valid as a man. Yes, you're right. You don't want your kids afraid of you. But my kids weren't going to be afraid of me per se. They were just kind of going to tune me out. Like she's just, she's not, I'm not
No,
gonna listen to her. I don't need to listen to her because she's just screaming at me. And I
no,
lost,
that
I lost my ability to have messaging and to make an impact at that time.
no, that makes a lot of sense. And if we look at the dynamic between my kids and I, and my wife and I, yeah, that really resonates. I think we've got the same kind of thing. Okay,
Mhm.
so is yelling just ineffective or is it actually damaging? Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, it's damaging. It's damaging. I ended up going and I've got a psychology degree, but I went and studied behavioral sciences and I studied, psychology. We had our kids at a Montessori school. So we did Montessori type schooling where they were learning about accountability and responsibility. And I now teach about being a leader in the home. So I have applied much of my business strategy, my business brain to parenting. And the parallels are solid. This taking time for training, letting know them expectations, up front, having my plan up front, just kind of completely did a 180 on my approach with my kids and got very quick positive results from that.
So let's talk more about that. Let's say if someone's potentially listening and they find themselves consistently in a rush, consistently yelling, not happy with the results they're getting. I mean, what's the first step? Where do we go from here?
Well, the first step is admitting it and knowing it. So in my case, my husband tried to tell me, it took me some time to have that realization. When I'm working with parents, the first thing I do, or even with teens, it's all about self-ownership. So we have to look in the mirror and own our behavior and own our messaging and understand that I take responsibility that if my child is behaving well and I take credit for that, I alternately need to, if my child is not behaving well, I need to take credit for that as well, right? So it's important for the parent to say, I'm the creator of the culture in the home. I'm the role model. They're modeling off of me. And getting back to what you said, which is that yelling is damaging. Yes, it is. So it's important for me that if I want to affect change in my home and I want behavior to improve and I want my kids to feel better about themselves, that all comes from my approach, my programming and how I'm building them up. So again, coming back to this leadership approach, it's really most parents when they're yelling or doing any behavior, hitting, grounding, whatever it is that can be damaging, we have to first take ownership of the fact that that is our behavior and our kids are reacting to us. So how do we show up differently so that we get a better result on the behavior? So first it's ownership of what we're saying and doing. You had a question?
Mm.
Did you have a
So you did say, and forgive me if you did answer this and I missed it, but you said yelling was damaging, and you also spoke about grounding and hitting. I think hitting, well, maybe for me, I think it's fairly obvious why that's damaging. But let's talk about yelling and grounding. Can you talk about the actual damage that's doing?
Well, it completely destroys the child's sense of self, their sense of self-confidence. It gives them anxiety. It creates stress in the home. You never really know if anything you're going to say or do is going to trigger your mom into being yelled at. It's really damaging to their nervous system. So they're on, that fight or flight all the time. They don't know what you expect of them. You haven't taken time to show them. You're just yelling and you're reacting. You're in react mode. Punishment is also potentially damaging in that first of all, depends on the child, but it'll damage their credit, their confidence in themselves, but it also isn't changing any behavior. So we are just sending a child to the room or doing a timeout and there's no real growth going on there. There's no training. There's no here, let me explain to you how we do this or how this looks or what I need from you. So what I do when I work with parents is now what I'm doing is we're backing up the behavior. So we're less reacting and we're now in a proactive position where we take ownership of what we're saying and doing, understanding how that's affecting the child and looking at the patterns of what we're doing. That did we get less sleep? Do we find ourselves super stressed when they come home? When do we yell the most? So sort of taking stock of your day, taking stock of your behavior, and understanding that by reworking that, we will get a different behavior from the child.
Okay. It's interesting, like you did mention about the similarities between business and parenting, and I'm just like reflecting on a lot of the issues I had in the early stage of the business. And some of those was like, I was a very poor communicator and I would hire staff and I would not communicate expectations. And then when they would not behave or perform in the way that I expected, I would fly off the handle or I would internally get very angry and frustrated. And realistically looking back, like I hadn't communicated to them what they need to do. So they're kind of just guessing and yeah. Okay. So,
Exactly. So as parents, we want to have the tools. And I know that in my case, when I was yelling, I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what else to do. I had to go take classes. I had to read books. I had to go back to school and understand because I wanted to make that much of a difference in our kids' lives and in the culture of my home. But yes, as I took the classes, I was able to kind of come up with my process and my systems. And again, it's not allowing life to unfold in front of you to where you're reacting. It's like, okay, here's how my day unfolds. Here's how how do I back it up and behave here? And that's goals, that's expectations, that's what you learned in business, having employees, having goals, making sure they're communicated. What are my top three? Here's what I expect from you. Here's how I want this done. Or, I don't care how you get it done, but this is the end result that I want. But kids are adults in training. And that's kind of what my big takeaway was, is that we're just looking at this parenting thing through a different lens and through a different perspective. And it was very helpful for me to put it through that business lens, that wear my business hat. It's not emotional. It's not reactive. It's just action, not words or less words. Because kids don't want to hear you all the time doing all the like, bap, 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 bap. Just say it, communicate it, and then have that boundary and follow up on it. It doesn't have to be overly. Whereas like you might not have been communicating much, women, we tend to go too much. We tend to be explaining every little thing. And, a 4-year-old doesn't care. He just needs to know, what do you need from me? So
okay.
it's a different style. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of approaching the child. And it's just a cleaner, more strategic way of running your home.
Okay. So let's go back to that potential listener or parent who has. So first of all, they've realized and they've accepted that they're not happy with how they're doing it. They're yelling too much. They're frustrated. They're flustered. This kind of thing. All right. You went over like a broad idea of what we need to be doing, more communication. I mean, can we kind of go a bit deeper on the actual tools? So what does that mean? Does that mean, we sit down with them and talk about specific expectations? Like what does that actually practically look like?
Well, first, when I'm working with a parent, what I'll do is like I say, we'll put the mirror in ourselves. We'll take accountability. In some cases, a parent might be like, yeah, if I were to be honest, I'm not holding the boundary. I tell them they have to have screen time done in 30 minutes. They ask me for more time and I keep telling them, okay, so now let's isolate where your behavior could be a bit confusing or problematic to the child. So every parent comes to me with different situations, but it's like if you're yelling or if you're not consistent with boundaries. So what it looks like is what could I be doing and where do I need to change my messaging? Then number 2 is, again, looking at the patterns of your day and your communication. It's looking at reworking your communication style. And what that means is usually with a parent, I will pick tell me, what's your number one problem? When are you yelling most? Or when is your child giving you the most pushback? Is it on screen time? What is it that you have going on? There's an underlying foundation with which I approach most parenting issues. And then we just apply it to whatever problem is going on in that family's home. So it's awareness, and then it's understanding, let's look at your day. When are you most having your power struggle with your child? When is that? Let's just pick one. And then we're going to restructure how we approach that. So if it's screen time,
Let's say bedtime. Let's say bedtime.
Okay. The approach is going to be somewhat the same, but also there are nuanced differences based on the ages. So bedtime means, 5 and under, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah. So I think what I teach is an earned access type of mentality. So again, if I'm going to take my reaction out of my day, I'm going to back it up and be more proactive. I'm going to say, okay, so bedtime is an issue. Now, I don't know what else, I don't know what all you are doing now. I don't know what's happening during bedtime for you. But I would say, are you clearly communicating the bedtime? Is the child sufficiently tired? Have they had a full enough day? All things are on the table that we look at to see how do we get these kids into bed. Then once we are taking time for training and we are communicating clearly what the expectation is, now we can employ some other tools to bed on time, but they have to have some type of skin in the game. So, and again, I don't know what specifically, maybe this is something that you've got going on at your home. I don't know what specifically the issue is here, or are you just looking for that as an example?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, it's just the first one that popped into my head, but like I do know a lot of parents struggle with, let's say 5 or 6 year olds or 4 year olds, going to bed, and then that turns into a huge battle about wanting another 10 minutes, and then not actually going.
Yeah, and then that's a boundary, and that's being consistent. So that is, we have to ask ourselves, if my child is pushing more, that's where I ask the parent, what do you usually do when they do that? How are you responding? I just need, now they're tucked in, like, I need water, there's other stuff going on that we have to talk about, right? So typically what I do is, because I'm about accountability, I'm about getting kids buy-in. If bedtime is a struggle, and I find that they're sufficiently tired, they're pushing it every single night, it's about attention or it's about other things than bedtime, what I'm going to do is say, okay, I'm going to have a training conversation. And you can do a training conversation as young as 4 and 5. And I can give it a really good example of that in a minute if you want. But sit down and say, we are going, to go, bedtime is 8 or 7 or whatever it is. We can do like a schedule that they get to write out. They can color photos. They can do, okay, what are the components of bedtime? Well, we brush our teeth. Okay, well, then we read a book. Then so here's the components. All right, so now we build the schedule together. So they're getting buy-in you can do this at 4 and 5, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated. It can be 1 or 2 things. And we can set timers. We can let the kids choose. They can choose the pajamas. They can choose whatever stuffed animal they want. There's some certain tricks that I've used with some families. We went out and we bought, there's one parent that I work with that's got an ADD child, so he has a hard time really kind of coming down from the day. So they went out and they went shopping for a sleep buddy. A sleep buddy is a special buddy that is only in this section of the store. And you can make up stories with kids at this age because they buy into the, these are sleep buddies. We're going to go and we're going to take a day of it, right? We're going to go to the store and we're going to go find a sleep buddy. You get to pick from these sleep buddies, and these sleep buddies will help you fall asleep. They're specially designed and you get to name it. So like, there's a bunch of stuff that we do to sort of bake in accountability, responsibility, decision-making, choice that gets their ownership into the bedtime routine. Then we can talk about, okay, the schedule looks like this. We do bedtime. What else do we do? Oh, we brush our teeth. Okay. Then we get tucked in. And then 8 o'clock is bedtime. So now I have my clock over here. Well, it's 8 o'clock and the bed buddy, your sleep buddy is telling us that it's time for sleep. Like, there are certain things we do, but under the little ideas that I'm sharing with you, there's a million ideas that I have. The underlying philosophy there is parenting upfront. So I know bedtime's a struggle. What can I do up front to teach my child the expectations? We can do a little chart together. We can do the schedule together. I can give them, do you want to brush your teeth first or do you want to read the book first? Choices, buy-in, accountability, and agreement. Now we're taking time for training and I'm saying, okay, do we understand the schedule? Do we understand that 8 o'clock is bedtime? When the clock says 8, your sleep buddy is putting you to sleep. Yes, mommy. Then what happens is that at 8 o'clock, you put them down. Now you have to mean it. So you have to say, we agreed. Do you remember when we made your schedule? We agreed. And these are words that a 5-year-old can understand. So I can give you a real quick example of, in our case, we had the triplets and a big playpen in the dining room. So, it was like these little fence pieces, so it was huge.
Yeah.
And my older son wanted to go in there and play with them. He was always looking for attention. So there's 3 years apart. And he wanted to go in. Every time he went in, someone started crying because, he thought it was cute to make him cry, all the things. Well, it took me a little while to realize that every single time he went in there, I went over screaming and yelling, you always make you're always making them cry. You, all this stuff, yelling, and I'm frustrated and I'm mad and just go to your room or whatever we want to say. Well, this method that I'm talking about, which is a parenting in advance and in a business method of accountability, is me saying before I put him in, when you go in and play with them, they always cry. If you go in and they cry, what should we do about that? Now he's 5. Well, I have to come out. Okay, so fine, I'll let you play. And then if they cry, then we agree that you come out. All right, well, sure enough, I'm tested, right? Because kids are going to test you. 30 seconds in, they're crying. Before, I would have to go over there and yell because I was triggered and I was in react mode. Now I'm in proactive mode and I'm parenting in advance. And I say, now I don't have to yell. I just walk over and go, Matt, what did we agree to if somebody cries? And he just looks at me and he goes, I have to come out. Yep. So it's these techniques that we're doing, we're taking time for training. We're looking at patterns in the day. We're looking at what is my behavior contributing, my behavior of yelling and frustration. Back it up and parent from in advance mode and bake in the responsibility, the agreement, the understanding, all of those things. And it can be done as young as 4 and 5 and this method is brilliant for preteens and teens. And if you start doing this at a young age, the amount of self-reliance and capability and self-accountability that you get put into and invested into your child is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, this is really relationship advice for any relationship. I mean, it's the same with, staff relationships, friends, marriages. Like, it's being intentional and proactive rather than reactive and chaotic after the fact. Yeah.
It's easy to say those words, but nobody knows how to do it. Right?
Well,
so it's like
yeah, well,
you gotta be taught and trained and shown, okay, I can have this intellectual conversation with you today, right now about it, right? But then there's parents listening going, yeah, but my situation is this. But how does it look in my situation? So the nuances are different, but my underlying methodology and foundation approach to parenting, yes, it can be applied in a variety of relationships. And in my book, I do have a chapter that is my magic mantra, and that is, I'm only in charge of me. I'm not in charge of you. Now that is really great. That's gold. And that works in every relationship. I'm only in charge. I'm going to tell you what I will do. It's letting go of
Yeah.
control. So and I've got examples there too, like with my husband. He was always, I was trying to wait for him to come home for dinner, making dinner. I'm trying to keep the kids busy, but he's home at 7, he's home at 6 because he flew a fighter jet. So he was not, didn't have that much control over his skin. Finally, I was like, I'm only in charge of me. I'm not mad at you, but I'm serving. He wanted to be able to work late and have dinner with the family. I'm like, can't do it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have dinner every night at 6. If you get home at 6, great. If not, I'm sorry, you're going to miss dinner. I'm not mad at you. I'm not passively aggressively trying to control you. I am not pissed off every time you don't come home on time at 6. I'm only in charge of me. I'm going to tell you up front what I'm doing, and you can flex to whatever it is that I'm doing. No arguments. I'm not mad. I've let go. I'm only in charge of me. And that is pretty much, a philosophy that we use in parenting as well. But you're right, it translates across all relationships.
Yeah, I think there's also like, I don't know. Look, first of all, it takes effort, but also there's, I don't know, a fear of rejection having those conversations up front. Yet the irony is like the chaos that stems from not having those conversations is so much worse.
And a lot of what I do when I work with parents is it's funny because the child's behavior is it's minuscule compared to the self-empowerment coaching and conversations that we have, especially with moms, because women tend to really have a lot of guilt. They are prone to I didn't cover this one's needs, and I didn't do this, and was he mad at me, and I didn't, blah, blah, blah. We're walking on eggshells. And I'm a big proponent of self-empowerment and just being unapologetic. I'm in charge of me, and here's what I'm doing. And, here's how this can flex between what works for both of us. How do we meet in the middle on what works?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but I think a lot of well, you said women like have struggle potentially with this people pleasing nature. I mean, how do you get over that?
Well, we do. We,
Yeah,
and that's like I said, a lot of what I do is working with, the mom will call me and say, my son is doing XYZ. And in some case, like this other family, her son is still co-sleeping with her and he's 5. She wants her freedom, but he's attached. I mean, this is all behavior that she allowed. And so how do we unravel that? How do we unfurl that and understand it? And then come from a position of strength and confidence in what we feel and what we want. And I do, and we do. That's a lot of stuff that I work on and coach, and it's a very important feature of function of relationships and dynamics, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your children, just this sort of, you're not alone. I think a lot of people a lot of people don't have the families to fall back on anymore. They don't have the grandparents. They don't have that family unit of people that are really invested in caring for them. And they really feel like they're on their own, or they're parenting children and they had a very bad role model and they don't really know how to change that. And sometimes just talking to a person who's been through it and who understands from a psychology standpoint, it's helpful to sometimes just being given permission that, you're not alone. We're all dealing, my kids are older and I still had kids that were doing the same things that you say your child is doing. You're not alone. Sometimes I'll just do like an initial conversation and just having those types of, I get moms going, I already feel better just knowing that it's not just my kid. It's not just me. Sometimes we live in a
yeah,
vacuum, we live in this little bubble, and that's why community is just so important.
yeah. I completely agree. I think that's important in all aspects of life.
Hmm.
Like I'm part of a business community where we all catch up and talk about our problems, and I always spiral, and I think I'm the only person with all this chaos. Like what the hell do I think I'm doing? And then you talk to everybody else, and they've got the same, if not 10 times worse problems, and you just go, okay, this is normal, everything's
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That is exactly right. And that is a lot of what I find with the parents that I coach. And I work all over the world, but I really am making a more of an intentional effort to do some local workshops and stuff because dealing with these people here where I can do in person or, I've got a Facebook group where we can all kind of communicate or Zooms. It is important to just sometimes talk to a person who's been through it, who understands. I mean, parenting is in my rearview mirror, which means I've gone through all the phases and I can tell you based on, my education and based on my experience, these are the things that work. This is the approach that works. And sometimes just knowing that you're in a capable person's hands that tells you it's so relatable. We all went through that. Oh, that's your kid's normal. That's fine. Moms are upset because their child says they hate them. Every kid, a lot of times kids can get to that point because they don't like boundaries or they don't like rules, but you are the creator of the culture of your home. And when you position a parent, even if it's not, if it's a mom that's at home with young children and she might not be working at that time, but she's working in the home, which is, by the way, 2 full-time jobs. Because if they're doing both, they're running a home and outside of the house, it's a 2 full-time job gig. A lot of times when I teach a parent to put their business hat on, it sort of changes the dynamic of the way they approach their child.
Okay, I wanted to talk about resilience and independence. My community, I hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, stuff like that, and there's kind of this sentiment around not all of them, but a lot of them, they got their drive from, I don't know, a level of neglect in their childhood, might I say, or, basically the school of hard knocks. And that's instilled this relentless drive. And then there's this like attitude of like, or this struggle for them between like, I don't want my kids to have a silver spoon in their mouth because they'll never have drive. And then some of them go like, but some of them, it's just like this weird tension that I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs about, right? I mean, from my point of view, I think the focus kind of needs to be on independence. Like, I don't think you can live in a nice house and give your kids nothing. Like, I heard an entrepreneur on, he's actually part of the community I'm involved in. And the other day he was banging on about, oh, you want your kids to be strong and successful, you have to give them nothing. And I was like, how do you do that living in a $10 million house? Like, anyway, I just want to kind of talk about your view on, I guess, building resilience and independence and stuff like that. And I guess, from my point of view, I don't think it only comes from neglect. So what are other ways we can foster that kind of thing? Do you understand where I'm coming from?
No, totally. Because
Yeah.
so what I would say to a person like that is, again, okay, everything starts and originates with the mirror. When I do local workshops, I hand everybody a mirror, and that's what what am I bringing to the table? So my reaction to that is, I love that you are a go-getter and that you had the school of hard knocks and all of that, and that you think you became something from that adversity, and that's great. However, there are just as many equal number of people who are successful because they had love and support and parents who gave them that extra edge. So you're living in your bubble that you think your way is the only way, yet you can still find successful entrepreneurs or successful business owners that were also raised in a nurturing environment. So it's not research, you know what I mean? Like it's not. So let's level the playing field and go, you know what, your way worked for you and the other way worked for other people. So let's talk about, what are your goals for your kids?
So that claim is potentially not based in reality, is what you're saying. Like that's an
It's not.
anecdote of one. Yeah.
It's not, and I know this just from our own four, but my favorite word, especially when you get to kids that are a little older, is partnership. Parents go on about, well, I'm not their friend, I'm their parent, and then you get the other side, like, well, I'm their friend. I want to be their buddy. So I'm erasing all of the whole friend versus not friend, and I'm saying we're partners. And again, more business talk. We're partners. Partners walk step in lockstep with one another. I'm here to guide, I'm here to train, and I'm here to support while you build your own capability and resilience and your independence. And I'm going to be structuring my home so that you are out making your own choices without me. I want you to know that you can choose and make mistakes in the safety net of my home where I can teach and train and guide you without controlling you. But you're also not buying into this idea of neglect. So you're not saying, I'm going to leave my kid. There is a happy middle ground. So in his case, I know that my husband was raised with a family that, you go to college, well, you can just you can work through school. If you really wanted it, you could go work through college. Well, it might take you 6 years to get your engineering degree, and you might have a lot more stress. You might end up with an ulcer. You might, there's a lot of hardship going on. And there is a way to have kids self-motivated, getting through school while you also support them with paid college, and they understand that this is a privilege that they earned because they went to school and got good grades, and they did a sport and they worked. Like, for example, you can build in things and expectations of your kids. We told our kids, you have to do a sport, you have to have decent grades, and you have to have a job. You have to balance all of that by 15. They made their own money. 2 of my sons paid for their own pilot's license. But if you want them to do some of these extras and you want them to be out there doing cool things, you're not going to put an extra stress and hardship on them just to get through the day. And by not paying for anything and making it painful, it's a counterproductive effort as a parent. That's not how you build trust. That's not how you build relationships. That's not how your child comes to you for everything. You want that trust. You want your kids to know that you're the safe place. But if you're busy over there, cutting them off from opportunity because you think you have to make life hard, you're just delaying progress for your
I also think it leads to like this deep unhappiness. I think it's motivation from, I don't know. I think it leads to them having to deal with a whole lot more trauma later in their life.
Yeah, and it's not necessary. So in that case, you have to that's a parent that you go, what are your goals for your kids? And then that's number one. And then when they say, well, I want my kids to come to me for things. I want my kids to trust me. I want my kid. Okay, well, yeah, what you're doing is not going to get you there. But also, that's a parent too who is going to start seeing behavior that he is not going to like. And then he's going to wonder why he's getting this rebellious behavior.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Unfortunately, if you didn't build at 5, 6, 7 that relationship and that partnership with your kids, if you didn't build that early on, by the time they get to be teens, you don't have it. You will be shut out. So it's up to him, But yeah, no, I don't. I'm not a proponent of that.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you would be. How do you think about, I guess, maintaining both authority and a relationship in a world of, I don't know, extreme stimulation and distraction with, I guess, all the modern technology and being, it's something I struggle with is there's a fear of, of children just getting sucked into distraction. I mean, I live in Australia, right? And, we've just had this, I don't know if you're aware, but we've just had the first country to put in a nationwide social media ban for anyone under 16.
Yes, it's fantastic. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic too. I mean, I've heard a lot of, there's a lot of differing opinions and there's a lot of conflict and contention right now in Australia around it. I mean, how do you think about, maintaining relationships in the world of distraction and social media?
My answer to that is that everything in life has balance. I don't move to restrict in terms of, oh my gosh, we're scared of AI, we're scared. I'm old enough now to know that every generation has some new thing that they're afraid of, and then it works out. So we can't start getting panicked and fearful. We can't parent from a position of fear. So we have to understand the technology, and we also have to teach our kids how to have balance. Again, we had expectations. You're going to do a sport. You're going to get, my kids are going to get out and they're going to move their body and they're going to learn how to take care of themselves. And my real answer to what we're talking about is that one of the other strategies that I use in parenting is to make sure children understand where they add value. They have to have purpose. And as young as 4 and 5, they can have purpose in the family. I've got the mom that I told you her son was co-sleeping with her and she was trying to get the nighttime routine. He is now getting up early and doing calisthenics because for that kid, he has the ADD. He's got this energy. So he's getting up and doing push-ups with his dad. He is then getting himself ready and coming downstairs and making breakfast for the family. And he's pouring the cereal. He's 5. When, these things are possible. So you start to add, you understand where your child feels value and purpose in the home and in the family. What is special about this child? What are they good at? And these are all very intentional strategies that we, like I say, bake into the children intentionally. Where are you adding purpose in the world? And then we help invest in those children as people. When you do that, whether that's them doing a sport outside, being on a team, music, if they're singers, if they're whatever it is, your job as a parent is to invest in those experiences outside the home. And it's work. It's a lot of work. But what you're doing is you're instilling a sense of purpose and value into that child. So they must know the value and role that they play in the family and in the home and out in the world. And that's going to change. One day, my daughter wanted to be a vet. The next day, she wanted to be, in the FBI. The next day, she wants to go. Now she's in law school. So my job isn't to tell you what you want to be. It's just to provide that support and guidance to march you in the right direction to learn what that looks like. But if you are constantly investing in your child those efforts, then they are becoming productively busy and they're not being spoon-fed all of this crap online. There's going to be times when they're gaming, and there's going to be times when they're on social media. But as a parent, if you are investing in the well-roundedness of your child as a person, then you are mitigating a lot of those problems and you are teaching your child balance and you're getting them out there and you're having them, under the guidance of a coach or a dance teacher or anyone else besides parents. They're being taught, instructed, and trained, and they're building a skill. And it takes effort. It's hard. It's hard to be that type of parent. But if you don't want your child to be dependent on all of the inputs coming in at them and having a steady diet of technology where someone else's opinions, thoughts, and ideas are being consumed by your child, then you need to get them out and have them develop their purpose and their passion. And I was always telling my kids, what gets you out of bed in the morning? And where are you going to add value in the world? And I've got to tell you, all 4. I've got 2 kids flying fighter jets. I've got a daughter in law school. I've got a son that moved to New York City. He's an actor and a model and a waiter. And all of my kids are out pursuing independent, fabulous careers that make them happy and fulfilled because they chose it. And we were just there to try to help invest in it. So that's my answer. You can't shut it down. You can't have any social media. You can't restrict it. Restriction creates rebellion. But what you can do is teach kids balance so that when they're out on their own, they know how to balance out their day and go, you know what? I've been watching this show for 2 hours. I gotta move my body. You're going to instill that in them that they are going to eat right and that all those things are you creating the culture of your home. So those are all things you're in charge of. And again, that's all the intentional parenting upfront type stuff that I teach.
It takes work, right?
It's draining, but it is fulfilling and it does work. And I'm telling you, there is nothing more rewarding than having these kids that are out pursuing their value in the world, that are adding value and coming home and telling us about all their adventures and being really capable, independent, responsible people. You cannot have resilience and capability in kids if you're not helping instill that. It comes from us.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think I fell into the trap of like, I don't know, when the kids were younger, it's just like obsessing over my job as a father is, providing financially, right? And, I think that's transformed as I've gotten older, right? Because yeah, it's a lot of what you're saying is really resonating with me. There's one more thing I did want to talk about. I mean, how do you think about leadership-based parenting in separated or blended families with multiple different households? Is there any kind of tips or tricks or anything you can point out there?
Yeah. When I talked earlier about that mantra that is in my book, that I'm only in charge of me, I'm not in charge of you, that is that is like an emotional altitude, right? Like that's a detachment. That's a healthy detachment of my kid and of my friends and my family, of I'm only in charge of me and I respect you to solve your own problems. And so I think that, go back, I'm sorry, go back to the question. I got off.
So I was just asking how that, like, how do you think about trying to, like, in blended families and different households, how do you think about, yeah.
Okay, so if I'm only in charge of me, I'm not in charge of you. I am only in control of the culture of my particular home. Now, when they go to the other home, the other parent and the other parent's maybe partner, I don't have control over that, but I do have control over the messaging I give my child and the relationship I create with my child, where my relationship, where my child knows that I'm the safe place, that you can tell me anything and I will not be shocked. I will not overreact and you can trust me. I will not say anything. So my job is that if I've got a difficult, co-partner or ex that I'm splitting households with, I'm only in control of my relationship with my child. So therefore, how does that look? That looks like I'm not bashing the other guy. I'm not bashing the girl. I'm not bashing anybody. I'm saying at our home, these are the rules we have. I'm in charge of me. This is how we're going to live our life. Because otherwise, when you start muddying the waters and trying to control what this one is doing and how that home is and whatever, it's a lot of anxiety, it's a lot of stress on the child. They hear that you're angry. In a case where there's two dual households, I need to reduce the anxiety and go, I'm only these walls, that's all I can control. And then I'm going to make the best of what I have. And when it comes to parenting, relationships are everything. So what are you doing to create that relationship to where your child will tell you everything?
I really want to, yeah, double click on that. Being the parent that the children can tell me anything, because that's something I didn't have growing up. And I think I had a lot of a secret life where I was afraid to share through
Yep.
getting in
Yep.
trouble, right? And I think that actually led to a lot of alcohol and drug use and a bunch of other, it led to a lot of dark places. How important is it to foster an open relationship where they can talk about anything, and how far does that go? That I want you to be able to communicate anything to me, and I'm not going to get angry and not going to yell. Like, how do you actually model that in real time? How important is that kind of thing? I think that's really important to talk about.
It's absolutely everything. It should be your number one goal is the relationship with your child. In my book, I did write a chapter on how to get your kids to tell you everything, and it's a very good chapter. It's excellent. I highly recommend, because I really go into a lot of the nuances of communication and how to get your kids to trust you. The number one thing I will say is you cannot react ever. I don't know how old your kids are, but number one, if they come to you and ask
6,
you a
9,
question,
14.
When? What, 6?
6, 9, 14.
Okay, your 14-year-old is already thinking dad might be, you know, dad can't handle it. He's dealing with all this other stuff, and I don't know if I can tell dad. Like, that's they get to that age where they think that we didn't have a life when we were growing up.
He does tell me some crazy shit. Like he'll say something to me, and I'm like, "There's no way I would have the confidence to say that to my dad about things that him and his friends get up
Well,
to."
good for you.
Which,
Then you are
yeah,
doing it.
it's awesome.
That's a great job. So number one, never react. Never ever act like you can't handle information, no matter what it is. You always stay very calm and you go, "Oh, tell me more about that. How did you find that out?" Or like, "How did you feel about that?" Always ask a question. When you hear information that makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck, you are not reacting. You're only going to ask a question and you're going to start to get how do they feel about it? Because one of the things that I did with our kids was I always told them, "Guys, you guys have it really a lot harder than I did as a teenager." I gave them validation. I said, you guys are facing so much more than I never had to. My hat's off to you guys. You're navigating a lot. I always acknowledged my understanding that they were faced with bullying and sexting and AI and, sexual assault from no sleepovers. God, the things these kids are seeing is unbelievable. And we're all like, we want to be like, what? You can't. Never react.
Yeah.
And then
So
number
okay,
three,
so no, I want to pause on that for a second. And I think that's incredibly important, but like I think people need to understand why. Why shouldn't I react? What is that doing?
oh, yeah, because if your child thinks that you are reacting, then you're not trustworthy. And you're not worthy of that information or more. So if you're
That fosters
a
I'm
distrust,
going to business speak now, but it fosters a culture of basically not being able to communicate honest and often. Basically, then secrets start to arise.
yeah. Well, if a kid, imagine a teenager, he's looking to you as the adult. You are to be the steady, consistent, mature person in their life. They're looking to you as sage and experienced and, all of these things. And if you're acting like in a panic or scared or like, okay, like for example, when my son was he had my oldest had a friend that was everything wrong with whatever he was the kid that was going to show my kid everything way before it was time. And
Yeah, that was me.
the temptation, yeah, but I loved people like you. Kid, I love people like you because as a kid, I would have seen what was going on with your family, and you would have been at my house all the time, and you would have. I have a really interesting story there. The kid that was my kid's friend, I used to put like motivational sayings on a blackboard in my kitchen. Every week, I would change them out, and they were just motivational. And the kids would be sitting there eating their breakfast all like, but they always read them. Well, this kid came over. He was probably 12 at the time. Anyway, comes over, whatever. Fast forward, he's at my son's high school graduation. They ended up going to two different schools. He walks up to me and says, "Mrs. Donnellan, I want to show you something." And he lifts up his shirt and shows me "Pain is weakness leaving the body" tattooed on his chest. Because that was the saying that was on my kitchen blackboard that week that he came over and loved it so much. He tattooed it. Okay. So anyway, this is a kid that most parents, if they're parenting out of fear, would be going, nope, you're not hanging out with him. But why didn't I do that? Because I had the confidence that I had my relationship with my son dialed in. So as long as my son was following my rules and getting home on time and telling me everything about this kid, I had no worries because he didn't have to lie to me.
But I think it's brilliant.
We didn't have gaming in our house back then. Now my kids are older, but we didn't have any gaming. I had no Xbox because my husband is a fighter pilot. And at the time, I said, "This is not a game in our family. Dad is over there at war, like in combat. It's not a game in our family. So I'm not bringing that into my home." Now I was able to do that because Xbox was still fairly new back then, but this kid had Xbox and he was turning on and off the blood. And, back at that time, that was like a big deal. And I could have easily said, "I don't have it in my house and you can't play it at his." Well, of course he's going to play it at his friend. I didn't drill down on those rules. You know what I mean? That would have been silly. Well, anyway, this kid found a gun underneath his parents' bed. And they're out, of course, we've already taught our kids how to use guns and whatever, but like my son comes home and he's like, "Hey, so-and-so found a gun underneath." And I said, "Oh, I could have been like, "What? You're never going over there again." I didn't react. Why? Because now my kid thinks, "Shit, my mom, I can't tell my mom anything. She's going to panic and now she's going to call his mom and then
Yeah.
he's going to get in trouble." Now, all of a sudden, my kid doesn't trust me to handle information. Now he's not going to, now I'm giving my kid the power. Because if my teen has the power to think they can withhold information because mom can't handle it, now I'm cut out and I learn nothing.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, that is my number one goal as a parent. Like, I want them to be able to call me if
Hmm.
anything goes wrong, because I never had that. And like, that led to me feeling so lonely and just figuring out shit on my own that I shouldn't
Yeah.
have had to figure out on my own, right? Like, so yeah, it's something I talk about with my wife constantly. Like, that's
And you know
my
what? I hope you share those stories with your kids. Do your kids know your past? Because
no.
no, you need to share. You do. Because do you remember? Well, I don't know, maybe with your upbringing, maybe not, but like when we grow up, we think our parents are so perfect. And then all of a sudden, your 14-year-old is going to wake up one day and be like, "Fuck, my dad's just another guy." He sees you as dad now, but the time is coming very soon where he's going to be like, "Oh, he's human." Don't wait for that to happen on its own. Tell him now. I remember I've got a friend from high school and we best friends all through high school. She tells me I don't tell my daughters anything about my past. Like, I don't want them to know anything. I'm like, "Why? It's a missed opportunity. It's missed conversation." My kids know all the crazy crap I did and they laugh. And you know what? The more I tell them of the stuff I did, the less they do.
Yeah.
It's like this
So
counterintuitive little secret.
I'm
But
very conscious of time. If you don't want to go into this too much, that's fine. But I think there's a fear from me of, like, I don't know, potentially appearing like I'm condoning the behavior. Like, oh, if he did it and everything's fine now, then why wouldn't I do it? Right? Like, I think that's the fear of why I don't share specific dark parts of my past.
okay, but you are in charge of the narrative. So, first of all, your child is going to experiment. Okay? They're gonna have sex, or they're gonna do drugs, or they're gonna get drunk and drive. I mean, they're human. Something is gonna happen. They are, because they're kids. That's just understand that if you accept that that is going to happen, no matter what you do, it's happening. Just it is. It's coming. Even the best kids are gonna do shit. Now, so you're not preventing that. With any course of action, you're not preventing it by not telling them, and you're not preventing it by telling them. You might be preventing it by telling them, but they're still going to have to learn their own lessons, just like you did. So if they know about your past, you open the door to so much more opportunity to talk. Now they're like, "Hey, are you going to prevent them saying, well, you did it? Okay, great. Okay, it doesn't matter that I did it. Fine. I did it and I want to share with you, where that took me. And it was dark. And now I'm talking about my story and my life and what I bring to the table as your dad. Also, I am never about the victim mentality, okay? However, The man that you are today, you worked hard to become, and you had a childhood that made you make the decisions that you made to have the life you had. So I'm not saying that you're a victim, but you are a product of what you were missing in your childhood. That's just a fact. So it's not like, you went and pushed the limits because you didn't have that guidance and that support and that parenting that your child now has in you. It humanizes you. It opens the door to so many more conversations. You don't have to lay yourself bare, okay? I don't know what your past includes, but you can at least share that you did experiment with drugs. You were left alone. This is why I'm the dad I am today, because I don't want you to have to learn these things the hard way. I'm here for you. I understand more than you know. All the stuff I'm saying to you right now is relationship. And when you break the seal on that, and you break that seal on that conversation with your children, especially your older one, now you just have so much more to talk about. And you understand. And now they're like, oh, well, dad had those moments, or dad, you'd be surprised how sharing some of that stuff actually makes them stay away from it. It's kind of a counterintuitive idea, but like, for example, I swear like a sailor. I swear every other word is, oh, fuck. I say fuck. I swear all my life. That's what I do. I swear. I'm Italian. That's what I do. When my kids were young, everyone was like, oh, you're going to have to stop swearing in front of your kids. I'm like, it's not happening. I'm like, I swear. That's what I do. I tell my kids, you know what? Those are adult words and you can use them when you're an adult. That's it. Do you know what? None of my kids really swear. I swore in front of them. I didn't care. I'm unapologetic. It's who I am. I didn't tell them never ever use it, but I said, when you're an adult, use it. I don't give a crap, But you're not going to say it in front of adults and not, you're too young to be using these words. It's an adult word. Done. It doesn't matter. That humanized me in front of the kids. And I'm like, you know what? I'm the adult here. So, yeah, it's just that empowerment, that you are a leader and you have a lot to offer, and your story belongs maybe with your entrepreneur group and maybe on your podcast, but mostly it belongs at home with your kids. Because it's great to share that with your family, and it will be very helpful. You don't have to have any fear about it.
So what a brilliant chat. We're over time. I've got one more little question to ask you.
Sure.
Are they squirrels I keep seeing in the background?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I went to the US, like we obviously don't have squirrels here, and I was so amazed by all the squirrels running around.
Yeah.
So I've just been peering over your shoulder the whole conversation. So
They're so busy, and then they run over my head too. So like chasing each other and running around. Yeah.
So where can people learn more? Where can they find you? Where do you want to point them?
Ask Mom Parenting. So I have a podcast that's on Spotify coming up on my second season, but it's on YouTube right now. Ask Mom Parenting on YouTube, askmomparenting.com on Instagram, Facebook. That will get you to me.
Thanks so much. That was awesome.
Great. Thanks, Luke. Appreciate you having me. I really do.